So welcome. I'm going to start off with this, which was a poll that I ran a couple of days ago, which is what is the hardest part of building an employer brand? And so I wanted to just find out whether this resonates with people. Do you, any one of those, does that stand out to you, or is there any others that you would add to the list? Well, in terms of these points, I will actually go through these at the end of the session and give some ideas as to what you can do for each of these things to kind of make it a little bit easier for you. So we'll leave it there on that one. But in terms of why it's important. So why should you bother doing employer brand? Now, I know that there's not huge amounts of recruitment happening at the moment, but my biggest thing is you don't always have to, you shouldn't just be doing employer branding when you're hiring. And it shouldn't all just be posts about call to actions, which is click to apply, click to apply. What we want to be doing is continuously posting so that we can kind of build awareness, so that people start to consider you when you are posting jobs. So there's quite a lot of research out there that kind of supports why doing employer branding is really important. So LinkedIn reported that you can reduce your cost per hire by 50%. That's basically by attracting people organically into your business. And if you're using the right or the most authentic employer brand messaging, then you're going to attract the right people to your business. You're 3 times more likely to recruit quality candidates. So again, that was another LinkedIn review. And then you can reduce attrition rates by 28%. Again, this is based on the fact that you're attracting the right people, the people that resonate with your core values, that add to your value, that add culture, add value to your culture. And then 75% of candidates will consider an employer brand messaging before they apply. And that is, really important to consider when you're not doing employer branding. And the impact of doing this is generally, if you don't have a good employer brand, you typically spend 10% higher on salaries. That was from a Harvard Business Review report. So you're kind of having to negotiate harder to get people over the line. It increases your recruitment costs because you're not getting organic traffic coming into you directly. Generally, you have to spend more on ads, on agencies, and it just makes hiring that much more difficult. And you're going to lose candidates to competitors that do have compelling employer brands, that do have authentic messaging, and do kind of paint a picture of where a candidate can really see themselves working and having a career. And then again, increased attrition. So again, if you're not getting the right people and you're not sharing what you're all about, then you might attract the wrong people so that when they join, they don't actually align to your company culture, your values, how you like to work. So again, it's, eventually they'll realize that maybe it isn't the right place for them. And so there's a lot of benefit in doing it versus not doing it. So I just wanted to start off with some stats so that we can be really clear on the kind of immediate benefits of doing employer branding. There's common pitfalls that we see all the time in employer branding. So a lot of companies will kind of shout about surface level stuff and use buzzwords. We're really inclusive. We have flexibility and all these things, but actually it isn't the lived experiences within the company. And actually, what we want to be able to do is be very authentic and clear on what you are able to provide, and then that being shown at each stage of a recruitment process. And then the lived experiences when they join. A lot of companies will be too aspirational. So they'll be talking about more where they're hoping to get to rather than being honest about where they are now. And I think it's really important to kind of share where you are now and what you're growth plans are and what you're trying to invest in or will be investing in to improve the culture and the ways of working, and kind of take people on that journey with you. And that person joining you gets to kind of add to this journey. So being balancing that aspirational versus that lived experience, I think, is really important. Not walking the talk and just being inconsistent. So as I just mentioned, it's if you're thinking about your employer brand from the attraction perspective, you can attract a lot of people in by what you say, but it will be very apparent quite quickly if you're not walking the talk. So that will be how your recruiters treat your candidates, how they go through the process, what the hiring manager experience is like for the candidate, and all the way through that process. If you're not living what you're selling, people will, you know, catch on to that quite quickly. And there's enough competitors out there that are doing that process really, really well. And so you might see that you get more dropouts. And then just quick fixes. So I'm going to talk about this in a sec, but it's just not doing your groundwork. So instead of just putting out messages around employer branding, but not doing the research before you do that can end up causing problems down the line, because you're not actually doing the research to understand what it's like to work there, what do candidates want, how will that messaging resonate, and then who your audience is and how you can target your messaging. And so some employer brand initiatives you'll find kind of fall flat quite quickly because of those reasons. And so investing in the time to do that is really important. And then this is what I would say is how to build an employer framework. So everything that and I've just mentioned this before, but everything that we do in employer branding should ideally start from your employee value proposition. If you don't have one, don't worry, you can build one. But I'm going to talk about employer branding based on that you have an EVP in place. So it should really underpin everything that you're doing with your messaging. And so the EVP is basically the value that you provide to employees in exchange for their skills, their expertise, and their commitment. And as I say, a well-crafted EVP is a really good foundation for your employer brand messaging and campaigns. And so make sure that you're kind of doing the groundwork there. You can do workshops and employee survey feedback. You can have round tables. You can have, private confidential meetings where employees can be really honest about everything, and it's completely anonymous, so no one feels that they're going to get any backlash if they say something negative. And there's lots of ways to get a really honest feel for that, and it's a good thing to do to get you started. And also when you're thinking about your employer brand and your messaging, is talking to your recruitment team. Your recruiters are so valuable in what candidates want. They live and breathe recruitment and are in that market all the time. They know why candidates are interested in your jobs from their screening calls. They call candidates if they drop out of the process to find out why. And if someone rejects an offer, the recruiter is generally the first person that gets that direct feedback. And so they've got they've got a finger on the pulse, basically, of what is happening day to day, which you can often get lost. So do engage with your internal employees as well as your recruitment team to see what's actually happening out there. But your employer brand is basically, what do you want to be known for as an employer? The different employer brand elements, these two levels kind of mixed together, is what do you want to be known for? Who is your audience? So if it's Gen Z, which is basically the workforce taking over the world, do you know how to create messages that are going to resonate with Gen Z? Do you know what they really want from a company and how that's different from maybe how you've approached it in the past? How are you going to reach people? So what's your go-to-market channels? Is that via LinkedIn? Is that on job boards? Is that via Instagram or other? So thinking about what channels you can utilize, and a lot of these are free. And do a content campaign calendar. So think about what are the key jobs that you're probably going to need to fill in the future, and start building campaigns that will help attract people or skills for the future. You might want to do a campaign over your your diversity and inclusivity initiatives that you have within the business. And so map out a content calendar over the course of 6 months or even a year, and think about what would you include in that, and then how often you can commit to actually posting, because consistency is really, really key in standing out from your competitors. And it goes back to my earlier point of, not just doing employer brand or advertising when you're recruiting. It's about building a picture about what your work life is like within your business. And then the other thing is around tone of voice. So what kind of language do you like to use? How does that align with your values and your culture internally? And so that's everything that you want to be considering within your employer brand and your employer brand elements, as I called it here. And then the talent brand is where you want to identify your brand ambassadors, and getting internal buy-in can sometimes be really, really difficult, because one resource is usually low. Recruitment isn't usually on the top of everyone's agenda. And also, if you're asking people to maybe do testimonials, do vlogs or blogs, that can feel quite daunting to people. And so building a group of ambassadors that can help drive the messaging around why this is important internally is really, really key. And then those ambassadors will be the first people that help you to develop your materials and your collateral that you can then, post out on your campaigns. And then if you want to, you can do pilot campaigns as well. So if you want to do mini campaigns and run them as pilots to see how well they land and what kind of engagement you get, or how many people internally are willing to take part in a pilot, that can be a really good way to get things started. And then you can use the information taken from that to help a long-term strategy, because you can show some of the benefits of doing that. And then once you've got all that, you launch, you go out into the world, and that's it, really. So it seems nice and simple, but those are the stages and the process that I've followed in the past. So at this point, you're not spending any money at all. You're just using everyone you've got inside your organization. You're doing the groundwork to make sure that you're authentic. You're mapping it out and planning it out and making sure that you can be consistent with your messaging. And then you're slowly starting to build engagement internally so that you can continue to kind of, with these, continue with these types of campaigns. So let's move on. So this is a bit of a busier slide, but basically what I'm talking about here is kind of pulling all of that together. So what you can do is, you don't have to do it in this order either. It can be in any order that makes sense in terms of how you're structuring it. But you want to optimize free channels. So as I said, you've got LinkedIn, which is completely free. The great thing about LinkedIn is that you can have a business page that you can promote things through, but also you can, like, personal brand is becoming such a big thing at the moment, and candidates trust employees more than they trust businesses. So encouraging your internal employees to start creating more of a personal brand on their own LinkedIn, which is aligned to your business, can be a really great way to start increasing awareness and engagement. Glassdoor is really good. Obviously, it's good to keep an eye on Glassdoor as well to see what people are saying about the business. Some companies don't engage on Glassdoor with negative feedback. Others do. Obviously, that's personal or business choice. But again, it can be a really good way to see how you performing outside of the metrics that you've got on your ATS system or your click-throughs. This could be a really good indication as to where you might need to improve in your employer brand or your recruitment processes. And then obviously what people think about your company when they work there. But these are just free channels that you can use. Engage your marketing team. If you're quite a small business, unlike you've got your own like careers page, but there's places on LinkedIn, like I think it's called LinkedIn Live, where you can create a section on there about working at the company. And if you want to kind of push content out on your corporate LinkedIn page, sometimes engaging with your marketing or sales and marketing team is a really good idea to find opportunities where you could have a regular slot to post content, and they can help you making sure that you're in line with their company branding and that tone of voice and all of that stuff as well. And so having a good relationship with that team, if you don't have the resources or the platforms that are specific to careers, then that can be a really good way. As I said, engage your recruitment team. They'll know exactly what messages are going to land with people, what candidates are actually looking for. And so I would run a workshop with your recruitment team and with your employees as well, and then translate that EVP and mission, vision, and values of the business into employer brand messaging. Automate where possible. So there is a lot of opportunity to automate or just to support you. So resource is one of the biggest issues, but you've got Canva, which is great for designing assets. You don't have to engage with an external creative agency to make your assets look really good nowadays. If you're stuck for content ideas, you can run it through ChatGPT or other tools, which are really useful. If you've got anyone that's techie in your business, they could probably help you build a GPT where you could build in your employee value proposition, your tone of voice, add in what kind of campaigns you want, and then it will spit out some content that would be useful for you to kind of work on. I wouldn't say use ChatGPT outputs 100%. I usually say ChatGPT is a good 60%, gives you the bulk of what you want, but then you need to put that personal touch, you need that human intervention, and you need to make sure that you're putting on your tone of voice basically and using the language that you would want to be using. But those things are really simple to use, and you can set up scheduling in LinkedIn. There's other scheduling tools that you can use, but LinkedIn's free. You could build out your month's post into LinkedIn and they would just be posted, once the time comes. So automate wherever you can. The implementation of a content calendar or a campaign calendar just helps you plan ahead. And so instead of scrambling every week to find content, if you've got a well mapped out content plan with some, high level ideas about what you want to talk about at that point, then you can use the automation tools to help you create these posts. And then that every week you've got a piece of content going out, because the biggest challenge that people mentioned was standing out against competitors, but genuinely I think it's consistency of posting that makes you stand out against competitors. If you really want to boost your reach, then you can do paid ads and lots of other things, but it's about being consistent. It's better for algorithms, it's better for reach, it's better for engagement. And so I think just being really consistent, and content calendars help you to do that. Repurpose existing content. So if you've done any interviews with staff in the past, or there's been any big news that you've shared internally, then you can use that and repurpose it for external use. And then appointing your ambassadors is really important. You need people that are going to champion employer brand. You ideally need some senior buy-in as well, because that helps drive that way of working and helps drive engagement. And then we've spoken about tracking metrics as well, so I won't go back over that one. But if you imagine it just like a bit of a journey, then if you were to do all of these things, utilizing only what you've got internally, you could make a huge difference in the impact of your employer branding without spending any money really. And I've seen these things work really well, but you need to make sure you're engaging with your recruitment teams and your employees and not being afraid to be honest about who you are and then what your aspirations are as a business as well. And then these are just going back to basically the start of what some of these biggest issues are. And getting engagement internally, this is what I always found really difficult, even working in a big corporate like PwC, getting people to volunteer to record a video is, it can be so painful to get people involved, but you have to have authentic employee content for it to really resonate. So this is difficult, but it's really important to educate the leadership teams on this and kind of present a business case for employer branding using some of the data that you've already got on recruitment cost savings, stats I've actually used here, why it's important, but then use your internal statistics and metrics to kind of show why investing in some of this stuff is going to be really, really helpful. We're not seeing lots of recruitment. There's lots of impact around employee taxes now. And so if you are going to recruit, you want it to be the right hire. And you want to be able to do that as cheaply as possible. And so if you can cut your recruitment cost per hire by 50% or up to 50%, then that's a pretty good business case to put forward to your leadership teams. Creating the employee advocacy programs that I've already mentioned, but it's just making sure that you're kind of telling the story really about what it's like to work there. Career progression stories are great. Anything that makes you stand out by being flexible, working from home, celebrating entrepreneurial spirit, not being too rigid in the ways that you work, having more of a flat structure, not being really hierarchical. All of those types of messages are really, really attractive to candidates. And then also shout about the internal recognitions that you do, any employee awards that you do shout outs on employees who work with you, if they're happy for you to do that, obviously. But, it's just about if you can get that leadership buy-in and get the employee advocacy program of people set up, then you can really drive some great efforts. But it is difficult to do this, and you do need to be consistent. And so it is an investment, particularly from a resource perspective. And I guess with the lack of resource and consistency is going to get you to reach, get you the awareness and get you to converting candidates from being passive to active candidates. And so going back to my last slide, if you were looking at building out that content campaign calendar and you've kind of mapped stuff out, then actually it's not as difficult to just get things posted. And so that can really help on the resource side. And then in terms of standing out for competitors, consistency is one of them, but then also being honest and like auditing your current messaging, review your competitors. How are they advertising? What are they saying in their job ads? What do their careers page say? What are the employee reviews on Glassdoor and Fishbowl and other places like that? And identify what your unique value is. And that you can get from your internal surveys that I mentioned, your workshops, the conversations you're having with your recruitment team. That can help shape what your unique value is. So that again just goes back to the point of doing your due diligence, doing the groundwork, really understanding what your story is, because that's what's going to help you stand out from competitors. And so, yeah, those are the roadblocks and some of the things that you can do to kind of to help improve your employer brand, get your buy-in, etc. So, and lastly, these are just some kind of key takeaways that I wanted to run through with you. So, as I mentioned before, do an employer brand audit, be honest with yourself, pull out those key messages, see where you need to improve, and make a plan on how you're going to improve that. If this is not a leadership activity, this is it needs to be a workforce strategy. We need to include our employees in this journey. More buy-in you get from them, the more they will engage externally and basically help you sell your business, your brand. Be consistent. It's not a one-time thing. If you do that, it's not going to work. You can't just start posting jobs, here and there, and then expect people to want to work for you if there's nothing else that's been going on your platform. And then just track your metrics. Just be really look at these monthly and quarterly, and then review, adjust, amend, that type of thing. So once you've done all these things, if you then feel, once you know where you need to kind of make more effort or where you're going to get the best return on your investment, then you might want to think about investing in, putting money behind it. So, okay, we know that LinkedIn's really good here. How can we leverage our brands more on LinkedIn? Or, I don't know, people seem to click more on videos or blogs or whatever it is. So let's get more of that out there. And so, yeah, just keeping an eye on that stuff as well. And then just having that relationship with your marketing team if you don't have a separate employer brand team. And that's it. That's everything that I wanted to go through with you this morning. And so now I'll move on to Q&A.